Hi, hello. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to get out of a panicked or high anxiety state. I'm Orla Kirby, I'm a therapist, and I specialise in helping people to move themselves away from severe anxiety and or OCD. I do this using a combination of NLP and solution-focused hypnotherapy. Essentially, I'm looking for people to, by the end of me working with them, be able to access really deep level calm, to be able to feel very confident, very creative, very fully themselves, and to be able to create the kind of life they want to create for themselves. So, in terms of moving yourself out of a panicked or high anxiety state, I've included this in the series about panic attacks because, of course, if I'm feeling like very, very stressed, that's one thing that could eventually lead into a panic attack, right? Not always, because sometimes people can just shift very quickly, right? Like sometimes people can be feeling kind of okay, and then almost before they know it, they're in panic attack, right? Like just this very steep sort of jump into adrenaline. And there may or may not be warning signs that they may or may not be aware of, perhaps, but sometimes it seems very fast for people. Sometimes, though, it's more like it's more gradual than that, right? And there's an in-between state of very elevated panic or elevated anxiety before you actually get to panic attack, right? And of course, I mean, these things are all just labels. What is one and what's the other is a bit of a tricky thing to say. You know, in our solution-focused therapy training, we generally just define panic attack as, you know, very elevated heart rate and or feelings of strong dissociation and or super high adrenaline, which of course can manifest in all these different ways, and people feel that different. People experience that differently. Like your heart would be going very fast, but people may or may not be aware of that depending on how kinesthetic they are, right? People experience it very differently. For some people it might be like, I can't breathe. That's a very common sense to have in a panic attack, but not everyone would have that, right? So it's if you think of panic attack as just like a super high pitch level of adrenaline, I guess what I'm talking about in this video is just like almost the level down from there, right? So you are anxious, you are panicked, but you yourself wouldn't quite define this as panic attack, right? And again, different people will use that slightly differently. So how do you get out of a panicked or high anxious state? Essentially all the same stuff that you would use for a panic attack, but you've maybe got slightly more options, right? I teach this very definite method for panic attacks because it's so intense and so extreme that it's good to have a formula that you're just like, that's the formula that I'm applying, right? And it's a really great one. You've almost just got more options. You've got a bit more room, you've got a bit more time if the panic is a bit lower, if the anxiety is a bit lower, right? So you can essentially use any means of going into hypnosis, right? I'm not saying that's the only way. There'll be other ways too, but you can use any means of going into hypnosis to shift yourself out of anxiety into a calmer state, right? And there's many different ways into hypnosis. If you'd like to learn in great detail about this, you can go to my free guide to self-hypnosis and meditation, which is orlakirby.com/learn to meditate, right? Lots of resources there, audio tracks and videos that talk you through how to really study this very deeply. One way into hypnosis is to really physically make yourself very relaxed and limp, and to associate that with a relaxed state because you've practiced putting yourself in a relaxed state while being limp. And then you can literally simply just really work on relaxing your jaw, and that might be enough, right? That might be enough to shift you down a notch, and then down a notch, and then down a notch. And you can kind of develop your own method or your own recipe, if you like, of like what works best to use this first and then this, or maybe these two things together. There's no one right way, right? So yeah, physical relaxation, you could just think about your shoulders and really relax your shoulders. Just notice your shoulders, drop them down. Think about like a comfortable heavy weight lying on your shoulders, or think about someone massaging your shoulders, or think about like being in the shower and the warm water falling on your shoulders, something that associates you with a particular part of your body, and that part of your body feeling really relaxed and comfortable and wonderful, right? Then breathing is another way into hypnosis, so slow, relaxed breathing, and there's many, many different breathing techniques that you can learn. The one that I've talked about in the videos previous in this series is mainly the 4-8 hypnotic breathing, so you could look back at those videos and learn that one, or again, that's also in my free guide. If you go to orlakirby.com/learn to meditate, there's more detail there on that breathing technique. And box breathing I've talked about as well. And you absolutely can use box breathing too for lower levels of anxiety than that kind of high panic attack state. you can use box breathing whenever you like, yeah, just to practice it. And of course, it will also be effective for shifting out of any level, even just slight worry. Box breathing is something you can use, right? You're feeling slightly worried about something, you do 5 or 6 box breaths, then you go into the slow, relaxed breathing. It's also going to be helpful there, right? For the same reasons as it's really helpful in the high elevated state, right? So box breathing, there's many others. There's a very slow euphoric breath that I teach where you breathe in for 20 seconds and you breathe out for 20 seconds. Sounds a bit impossible, but you learn very gradually by building up. And there are many other breathing techniques you can learn as well, right? You might want to experiment a bit and learn different ones, learn in different ways. You can, of course, go to yoga and learn breathing. You could go to a singing teacher and learn breathing that way. You could work with a hypnotherapist. That's what I do. I'm a hypnotherapist, and learn breathing from a hypnotherapist who's trained in breathing. You could go and learn Alexander technique, right? It's excellent for breathing, among many other powerful processes. So there's different ways in, and different people are going to learn in different ways, most beneficially. But absolutely, breathing is so powerful. So learning to use breathing in a way that shifts you into a calmer state is absolutely something I would recommend. Then another way into hypnosis is eye defocusing. So this is where you just basically, I don't know if you can really see me doing it properly, you can't, but basically if I was just really looking at if I'm just really looking at my finger, right? Or like say the cuticle on my finger, I'm really short sighted, it's quite hard for me to see that from here, I need to be here. But if I'm just really looking at the cuticle on my finger, I'm very tightly focused, and then I'll probably at some point feel like my eyes want to go a bit wider, so I'm just letting them go wider. I'm letting them go wider again. I can kind of see the radiator over to this side, and I can see the piano still that way, and I'm just letting them go wider. And if my finger's still here, I can still see the cuticle, I can still see my finger, but I can kind of see wide. Now I can just really see my finger, and I can also see the window, and I can see the piano, and I can see the wall on this side of me, and I can see the window, and now I can kind of see the chair here, and and if I concentrate into it, I can just keep my eyes still. It's very relaxing to just open up your gaze and take in the whole room, all the way around me. So that's a very deeply calming thing to learn and to be able to do. In NLP, we call it accessing the learning state or the coaching state. And if you go to orlakirby.com/learn to meditate, there's a whole section there on how you can learn and practice this defocusing of your eyes and different exercises to help you with that. So that's a really wonderful way in too that you could practice. Some people, when they practice that, immediately love it and find it really peaceful and calming. And some people find it even quicker than breathing for calming yourself and shifting yourself out of a high anxiety state into feeling calmer and easier in yourself. Some people actually find it quite disconcerting or don't get on with it. So if you hate it, like just stop, right? Like with anything that I teach, if something feels awful, immediately stop and maybe contact me or contact someone. There's always going to be a different way in, or a slower or more gradual way in, right? And some people just find it a bit nothingy, and they almost need to practice being relaxed while doing it, right? But eventually, this is something that anyone could learn, and it's a tool, right? It's a way to put yourself into a relaxed state. So it doesn't necessarily like work or not work. It's more like you need to learn to get it to work, kind of thing, right? Just like with the breathing, there's a way of doing it, of relaxing your eyes that allows you to feel really calm that anyone can access, but it is a case of learning and practicing. As I say, if you want exercises and resources for practicing that defocusing your eyes, you can go to orlakirby.com/learn to meditate, and there's just a few different kind of things that link up with imagination as well that help you to learn that really fully and deeply. And then another way into hypnosis is simply to use your imagination, right? There's a whole video in this series on using your imagination to shift yourself out of panic attacks. And similarly, all of the things in that video, you could also use at a lower level, at an earlier stage, right? Or a lower level stage of worry, or of feeling fretful, or feeling panicked and anxious, but not quite a panic attack, right? At any of those stages, you can use imaginative stuff. If you're imagining something wonderful or very peaceful, or that makes you feel happy, or that makes you feel powerful or strong, or that makes you feel amazing in some way, any of that is going to help to shift you out of any level of anxiety and towards feeling happier, calmer, more yourself, more confident, all of those things, right? Or whichever you're choosing at the time. So yeah, really, really valuable to learn how to do that. And you can just use the imagination on its own as a way into hypnosis, right? So it's perfectly possible to go into a hypnotic state just using your imagination. You don't also need to do breathing and eye relaxing and relaxing your body, right? If you do all of those together, that is very powerful, right? However, you can also use any of those 4 things on their own. They are all absolutely valid paths in, ways into hypnosis that work by themselves. And if you combine 1 or 2 of them or 3 of them together, that can then be even more powerful, right? Okay, so that's how to shift yourself out of a kind of panicked or high anxiety state. And the next video is going to be how to prevent panic attacks. So this is kind of more the deep level stuff of how to prevent panic attacks happening long term. Yeah. Okay, I'll see you there.